Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the transfer tips for Blank Gameweek 18. I'm going to discuss 10 players to buy, hold, sell and skip. Let me know if you disagree with any of the selections coming up, and if you also have any other players you want to discuss down in the comment section below, in the Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, all the links are in the description below. Let's get this video to the 200 likes, and then there'll be the best wildcard team selection and the deadline stream before the Thursday deadline in Game Week 18, and we're 60 subscribers away from 22,000 overall, and that is our big aim by the end of the year. So let's smash those objectives and reach new goals in the future. Without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. The first buy of this video is Dominic Solanke. I discussed him last week for Game Week 17, and I reaffirm what I said there. I believe he's a very good striker option if you're looking to replace Alvarez or Haaland, who blank in Game Week 18, and Haaland, of course, has that injury problem. Then you've also got Darwin Nunez and other forwards that might be very frustrating to you. Isak, for example. I think Solanke is one of the very best replacements. I would rank Ollie Watkins above him, and I've said this all along, but the next best option, in my opinion, would be Solanke in the forward position. Once Erling Haaland comes back from injury, he'd be the very best option, period. And of course, when Man City return from the Club World Cup. But Solanke has got 9 goals, 1 assist. Let's see what the final verdict is on that Bournemouth vs Luton Town game, and if the game is reset from the beginning, then Solanke's goal in that match will be reset, same with the points, and he'll be down to 8 Premier League goals. But they could also continue it from where it was left off, and as a result, Solanke would keep his 6 points. But the 3 bonus points he was on at the time would be reset, and it would be what happens at the very end of the game in the continuation of the match. That's what would be the final bonus points and overall score for the Bournemouth and Luton Town players. But good long-term fixtures. There are some tough ones in there like Tottenham, Liverpool and West Ham, but I still think Solanke could score in those difficult games. He's got 14 big chances for the season, 79 FPL points and 6.8 million in price. His ownership has almost doubled from the time I last discussed him in last week's transfer tips video, and Solanke for me is just a great option. His XG is 8.48. It's identical to Watkins. A lot of the stats are shots on target. 52 shots overall is very impressive. So for me, Solanke is a buy, especially if you're in the market for a new striker. Trent Alexander-Arnold has won me over in recent weeks. Maybe 1 or 2 months ago, I was less keen on him and I would have said go for Tsimikas, but you see the Greek left-back constantly being benched from time to time, and it could be the case in some of these easier games like Burnley away coming up. But Trent plays every single minute, and not only that, even when he concedes and gets no goal contributions, he's able to get bonus points as he did against Crystal Palace. His consistency is unbelievable in the last couple of game weeks, and even with some tough games in there like Arsenal, Newcastle and perhaps Chelsea, I still think Trent can do extremely well in these big games. 2 goals, 3 assists, 10 big chances created, 40 key passes and 84 FPL points. That's why he's priced at 8.2 million. Only Trippier has more points amongst defenders. His ownership is also 17%, so whilst he's not a differential, he's also not a template pick, and I think there's a very good way to get ahead of the curve. And with Salah and Son heading off to the African Cup of Nations and the Asian Cup in Game Week 21, coupled with the fact that Haaland is blanking in Game Week 18 and is potentially injured for the weeks afterwards, you would want to redistribute your funds elsewhere, and I think going for Trent in the backline is a great way of doing that, and you can get plenty of bonus points, assists and clean sheets from Trent Alexander-Arnold, especially at Anfield. Pau Torres is currently flagged in FPL, 75% chance of playing with a knock, and Emery, his latest comments on him was straight after the Brentford game, and he said, hopefully it's a small injury, hopefully. The big problem today is the red card of Kamara. It is the biggest problem for us. So he doesn't seem too pessimistic about it, and maybe Pau Torres could be available for Game Week 18. If that's the case, I think he's the best Aston Villa defender to buy. Now, in the next 5 game weeks, there are some tough games in there like Manchester United away and Newcastle at home, but in the long term, Aston Villa have a great fixture run and they could build upon their current 2nd position in the league table and perhaps challenge for the league title in the weeks to come. Of course, there's going to be a lot of tests along the way, and Pau Torres for me is the best way to cover their defence. You could also go for Konsa or Diego Carlos. I would avoid the likes of Alex Moreno or Luca Dean on the left-hand side. I think there could be rotation there. With Matty Cash, he has lost his spot, and it looks like Konsa will start most games at right back, and when he doesn't, he will slot in as one of the centre-backs, potentially in that 3-5-2 formation that Aston Villa usually deploy away from home. But for me, Pau Torres, when he's fit, he's the most nailed-on player. He's got the most goal threat, and he also can get the odd assist here and there and bonus points. 4 big chances for the Spaniard, 60 FPL points. His ownership is 7.2%. If Pau Torres is out, I would skip him, of course, and then go for the likes of Diego Carlos, who is priced at 4.4 million, or Konsa. But apart from that, the only way to cover the Aston Villa defence would be with Emi Martinez. Heung-min Son is constantly talked about in these transfer tips videos because he's such a popular choice, and there's also so many circumstances surrounding him, whether it's an injury doubt, whether it's poor fixtures, maybe some poor form, Maddison's being injured, what does that mean for Son? And now it's the Asian Cup in Game Week 21, and of course, in the next couple of weeks, you're going to have to sell Heung-min Son eventually. I don't really advocate for benching these very expensive players up until they return, because Son could be out between Game Weeks 21 to 24, and he will return around Game Week 25. Of course, it depends on how far South Korea go. The same goes for Salah and Egypt as well, around the same time period. But for me, Heung-min Son is a hold for now. I would not sell him at home to Everton. He's got a good record against them. In the last 2 meetings at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Spurs have scored 7 and conceded 0. I don't think that'll be the case this time round. I think Everton are in a great position right now. Spurs are going to be missing Basuma due to suspension, and they've got other injury problems. But Heung-min Son can still do well in that game, even if Tottenham Hotspur don't get the result they want. He is priced at 9.8 million. He continues to go up in price. More and more people are buying him. I think he's closer to a buy than a sell right now. But ultimately, around Game Week 21, when he faces Man United away, that's where Son will be off to the Asian Cup, and that's where you sell Heung-min Son for me. Now, if you're in a position where you have Son, Hwang Hee-chan, and Salah, I would prioritize selling Hwang first, and then around Game Week 21, you sell Son and Salah, because in the meantime, over the next 3 game weeks, Son is still arguably the best midfielder in the game, only behind the Egyptian, and those two for me are must-keeps up until they go off to their respective international competitions. Trippier isn't flagged in FPL at the moment, but he did come off with an injury against AC Milan in match day 6 of the Champions League, around 63 minutes, and we don't know the full extent of that injury. We'll find out more naturally during the midweek when Newcastle play Chelsea in the Carabao Cup. Trippier could start that game or be on the bench, and that will inform us about his availability for Game Week 18. But in the long term, Trippier is a hold, despite the fact that he faces Liverpool, Man City and Aston Villa back-to-back between Game Weeks 20 to 22. That is obviously a really poor fixture run, 3 of the toughest games in the league at the moment. But Trippier is priced at 6.9 million. His ownership is 42.7%, 7 assists for the season, 45 key passes, and a minor correction to what I said earlier. Trippier is second now in terms of FPL points amongst defenders. Trent has usurped him after that 9-point haul against Manchester United, and Trippier missed out against Fulham due to the suspension they accumulated very recently with 5 yellow cards. So that is also reset. That's another positive for Kieran Trippier. And overall for me, he is still arguably the first or second best defender in the game. At this moment in time, you would rank Trent first, but Trippier is always going to be in the conversation. He's got such a high ceiling, and for me, he's a great option in the long term. Darwin Nunez is immensely frustrating to say the least, and as I discussed with Trent, the next 5 is a bit mixed bag in terms of fixtures. He's priced at 7.6 million, he's owned by 16% of the game, 4 goals and 7 assists is a decent return, but he should have way more goals if we're being honest, in terms of the XG, the amount of chances he's had, 18 big chances, and also 47 shots across the season, 63 FPL points, and I think it's a very easy thing to do in terms of selling Darwin to Ollie Watkins or Solanke. They're both on another level right now, Watkins being the clear standout and Solanke being next in line for the best forwards in FPL right now. So Darwin Nunez is a sell. He can cause chaos and do well in these big fixtures like Arsenal and Newcastle. You saw the brace he scored against Newcastle at St James's Park earlier in the season. That was an amazing performance by him off the bench, but he could be benched in some of these games and his ceiling would be lowered as a result. He's in terrible form right now. He hasn't scored in about 10 games. So for me, Darwin Nunez is a sell. Matty Cash is still living off that brace he scored against Burnley back in Game Week 3. Ever since, he's been absolutely horrific. I think he's only got 1 goal contribution in that time. And I covered Matty Cash around Game Week 14 in the transfer tips, and I said he's a sell back then. And since, he's produced 4 FPL points. That is horrific to say the least. 2 goals and 1 assist for the season. His XGI is very impressive, 5.05. 49 FPL points overall, and he's still owned by over 20% of the game, but his price has fallen dramatically to 4.7. I think it was 5.3 million the last time I covered him. The fixtures are great long term. There are some tough ones in there, and Matty Cash will get the odd start, but against Brentford, he got his first start in a while. He was very underwhelming, and now I'm not so sure if he's going to play against Sheffield United, and as a result, I think he's a sell. If we get a lot of in the nose or those with predicted lineups that are very reliable, predicting Matty Cash to start, then I would keep him for that Sheffield United fixture. But overall, he is a sell in the long term. It's just a question of timing. And at this moment in time, I believe he won't start in that plum fixture in Blank Gameweek 18. And as a result, Matty Cash is a sell. I still like Hwang Hee-chan as an option, but if you have a lot of Asian and African players who will head off to the African Cup of Nations and the Asian Cup in Gameweek 21, you need to prioritize. And as I talked about earlier, with Son and Salah, you would ideally sell them in Gameweek 21. But if you have Hwang Hee-chan as well, Anna Kudus, or maybe any other player in your ranks from those respective continents, then I think Hwang Hee-chan would be a priority sell from those options, because you need to start, offloading them in the next couple of weeks. And the fixtures aren't particularly great. Wolves are very inconsistent, and Hwang Hee-chan has blanked in 2 successive games. I still think he's fairly consistent, and when Pedro Neto returns, that's only going to bolster the Wolves team, and Hwang Hee-chan will score even more goals and have even more chances. But the underlying numbers aren't particularly great for the South Korean. His XG is 4.17 and he's scored 8 goals. So there is a big overperformance there, which is in part due to his finishing, which is of a high level. His ownership is 11.7%. He's still a very cheap option at 5.8 million. But as I've said in the last month or two, my favourites at that price would be Gordon and Palmer, and right now Palmer is looking like the best option at that price point. But Hwang Hee-chan would be third overall in terms of midfielders priced at 6.5 million and below. And once he comes back from the Asian Cup, I think he's firmly back on the radar, and he's probably the best Wolves asset alongside Pedro Neto. But for me, at this moment in time, Hwang Hee-chan is a sell. Now, hear me out. I think Kudus has been very impressive in the last couple of weeks, and once he returns from the African Cup of Nations, he's going to be a sensational FPL option and differential. But if you're looking to buy Kudus right now, the next 3 fixtures are Man United at home, Arsenal away, and Brighton at home. Yes, he can do well against any of those teams, and he has done very well against the Gunners in the Carabao Cup earlier this season, but you would be buying Kudus for 3 pretty average fixtures, to say the least, and then he heads off to the African Cup of Nations. I think you could definitely spend your money more wisely, and it's just booking in a transfer. The fixtures aren't particularly great, and the underlying numbers are not good at all. His XGI is 3.04, and he's got 8 goal contributions. His XG in particular is 1.63. Only 2 big chances and 2 big chances created for the Ghanaian. I think he's a great player in terms of his dribbling. I think he has a lot of potential, and on his day, he's simply brilliant. But in terms of buying Kudus right now, I think it's a bit reactionary following a 16-point haul in Gameweek 17. You've got those 3 upcoming fixtures, the African Cup of Nations in Gameweek 21. So because of that, he is a skip for now. And once he returns from that competition, I think Kudus is definitely a buy, or at least firmly on the radar. The 10th and final player covered in this video is Nkuku. I've been asked a lot about him in recent weeks, and he was finally in the squad against Sheffield United, so things are looking positive for him. I think Nkuku is one to place on the radar, but I wouldn't buy him just yet because he's going to be eased back into things. He'll get some minutes off the bench before finally starting some Premier League matches, and who knows how long it will take for him to get that match sharpness back, that rhythm, and also that confidence in front of goal. So Nkuku, I think, will make a difference to Chelsea, and he could turn out to be a really good signing. But in FPL, there's no real need to jump on the gun. I know we want differentials and we want to be ahead of the curve, but I think Nkuku is a huge risk, and it might take several weeks or potentially months for this transfer to pay off. So that's it. We've covered 10 players to buy, hold, sell, and skip. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I think Kudus is a good FPL option, but for the reasons described earlier, that's why I would skip him right now. And on screen, you can see the most transferred out players. Erling Haaland is first with over 300,000 managers taking him out, and that's a big consequence of the Blank Gameweek Man City have, of course, alongside Brentford, because Man City are off to the Club World Cup, and of course, Erling Haaland is also injured, and that could complicate things from Game Week 19 onwards, especially for those that ended up holding Erling Haaland. So let's see what the latest is on the Norwegian robot, and there's so much more to discuss ahead of Blank Gameweek 18, so be sure to check out future content, the deadline stream, team selection, and best wildcard team videos. If this video gets to over 200 likes, then that will all be arranged for you, and also be sure to subscribe to the channel. It very much helps us out. We are 60 away from 22,000 subscribers overall, so let's keep on pushing towards those goals and more in the future. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, and Draft Hound, and I'll also be talking about that in future videos as well. I wish you all the best of luck for Blank Gameweek 18 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.